Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be interviewing Jim Moss Sr. I'm really excited to have him on the show. And he just wrote a book. This is it right here. Everyone can be a magician. We're going to talk to him about this and about some other things. So stick with us. I think it's going to be a great interview.
It's up and running.
I'm glad you made it.
Thank you.
I love the props in the background.
Oh yeah. That's my small collection of magic props.
So you got a hand chopper back there.
Yes.
That's nice. That's
Yeah.
nice. What is the dice? The die on the yellow die on top.
Oh, I use that actually in the book because you read through my book, right? I use that for the number prediction.
Okay.
And what I say in doing that effect is I have a menu with me from like a Chinese restaurant. And I say, when I go in to order food, I don't just pick from the menu. I roll this die and it picks the meal for me. And then we go through the whole, with all the numbers.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And I see your book there too. I have my copy here.
Oh, good.
So we will
Wonderful.
talk about that. But thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
So listen, Jim, here's where I wanted to start. I
Okay.
love to hear people's magic story. So
Sure.
if you could tell me a little bit about how you got started, what inspired you, how you developed as a magician.
Okay. Well, the way it all started, I was quite young, 10, 11, or 12 at the most. And I heard of the Yogi Magic Mart in Baltimore City. And I know we have that shared experience because you've been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And so I saved up my money. I took a bus to North Charles Street in Baltimore City, which is never a good idea when you're only that young.
How old were you?
Uh, at the most 12,
12.
somewhere between, yeah, maybe like 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So I catch a bus, I make my way through Baltimore City, and I find the building that has the Yogi Magic Mart in. I remember stepping in the building and being confronted with that huge elevator.
Yeah.
And I get on the elevator, and there is a little placard that says the Yogi Magic Mart, the Mecca of magicians. And I hit the button, and it was almost like a Willy Wonka moment. And it takes me up to the third floor. And when the door opened, I thought I stepped into heaven because, you see my few props back here, but I walked into like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of props,
Yeah.
and it was very busy. And you could hear doves cooing in the background and rabbits. And um, as I'm making my way into the store, there's a gentleman behind the counter who happens to be the owner, Phil Thomas. And I said to Mr. Thomas, I said, "Oh, I've got this magic trick that I want to buy," and it was the disappearing silk trick. And he says, "No, no, no, you don't want to buy that one trick. What you want to do is buy this book." And as a kid of that young age, I'm thinking like, "No, you're not listening to me. I don't want a book. I want that trick." So he says to me, "But you buy the trick, you get one trick. You buy the book, you're getting a couple hundred tricks in that one book." Um, Now, my stubbornness, I bought the trick and I didn't buy the book. But later, in a follow up visit, I did buy the book, and he was absolutely 100% right. That that was the way to go. And then the second thing, I stumbled upon Marshall Brodeen's Magic Kit. I don't know. You're familiar with the Magic TV Magic cards, and
Yes.
I pulled it out, and that's the actual kit that I bought way back
Yeah.
in the day.
Look how good that looks.
I
You take
know, and
care of things. That
well,
is that
yeah.
is
Now
mint.
some of the pieces in there are, a little bit worn and torn, but I look and I thought, wow, 9.95, and I got an entire magic set. And I think nowadays, if you try to buy such a thing, it set you back maybe $50, at the least.
I've
So
reviewed
those,
a couple of magic kits on this channel, and
oh,
yeah,
nice,
yeah, they're
nice.
they're they're going for $50 and up.
Yeah, yeah. So those were my two main things that really propelled me into magic was getting to the Yogi Magic Mart. That was my first magic shop, and then the Marshall Brodeen magic kits and cards. But Baltimore was a great place to be for magic because I also went to the Funhouse Magic Shop and I also went to Denny and Lee's. And I'm sure you're familiar with both those places.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
and Lou,
the
oh, go
Funhouse
ahead.
Magic Shop, you know, the Magic Mart lasted for a long time because it moved to Ellicott City. Now,
Right.
I never went to Ellicott City when it moved there, but Lou Walston, the Funhouse
Yeah.
Magic Shop, was kind of the bridge, in my mind anyway, between the old Magic Mart of Phil Thomas,
Right.
the Denny and Lee Magic Studio, which
Ri-
ultimately became. I mean, Denny was a prodigy of Phil Thomas. So the two
Okay.
of them had a very much the same philosophy. So you
Right.
walked into Denny's shop. If you were a young aspiring magician, you walked into Denny's shop. Guess what he would say to you?
Buy
Buy
a
a
book.
book. Buy a book. Yeah, it's a book. In fact, I think on Denny's tombstone, there's the phrase "It's in Tarbell"
Oh,
because
yeah.
almost everything is in Tarbell.
Well, it's true.
So,
Well, and I'll show you because I've been pulling stuff out, thinking about
oh
this is the
yeah,
book that Phil Thomas wanted me to buy, and he loved putting in the stickers.
that was the one he wanted you to buy when you wanted to buy the trick, magic and
Yeah,
showmanship.
yes, because in this book he said you'll learn about stage presence and you'll learn about patter and you'll learn about sleight of hand, and within here there are tricks that you'll learn as well. Um,
That
so
is
and,
that's not an easy book for a 12-year-old.
no, no, maybe he thought more highly of me than what I was mentally
That's not
prepared.
an easy book for a 20-year-old. I mean, it's kind of rich and
Yeah,
yeah, it takes some discipline to get through that book.
right, right. But it's an excellent book.
Yeah.
And of course, like you had already mentioned, I got the Tarbell series, which was wonderful. And I got the Mark Wilson course in magic.
Yeah.
And that's actually where the cups and balls came from.
Yeah. Oh, those the
Uh,
Mark Wilson cups and balls?
yes, because when they had a thing that if you bought the book, they would include a set of cups and balls.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the reasons that I wrote my book was I think right now for a young person to start in the hobby of magic, it's so cost prohibitive because like you were saying, to buy a basic magic kit could set you back $50. That's a lot of money, especially if you're young. And one of the things I emphasized in my book was that you can make all the props from household items and some poster board. And in my book, I give you like 12 tricks and how to do them and how to make the props. So with those 12 tricks, you could put on your own magic show, you know.
And you're
Uh,
going to be doing a series of elementary schools?
Actually, tomorrow, I'm giving a series of talks at a local elementary school, the first of a couple. And I'll be presenting magic tricks and I'll presenting the book because I really want to encourage young people hoping to help them develop a love of lifelong reading. Because when I do the magic show for them, I preface it by saying everything that you're going to see here, you can do too. The key is to learn the secrets. And where do you learn the secrets? Where do you find them? You find them in books. So you got to read. And reading is the key to figuring all that stuff out. And when I do say that, you'll see teachers in the background nodding their heads and giving me a thumbs up, like, yes, anything to get these kids to like reading. Because a lot of kids kind of fight it, I guess. And my daughter co-authored the book with me, and she is
Your
uh,
daughter is Mary Moss.
yes, and she actually designed the cover.
Nice.
Yeah, she designed the cover, and then she did some writing in the book. And she is a elementary school teacher. And the effects that we chose for the book included effects that used mathematical and scientific principles, like physics, because the other thing that we were trying to get kids to do was to say, well, hey, this mathematics isn't so bad. It can actually be fun. And this physics isn't so bad. It can actually be fun. So, in kind of an indirect way, we're trying to help kids to love reading, to love mathematics and science and all those things in between, you know.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that as I visit these different schools, kids will say, yeah, I want to read more. The funny thing about the presentations tomorrow, um, I only had about 100 students scheduled through the couple of presentations I was going to do. And just about 2 days ago, I got an email and said, James, would you be okay if we added a few more students? Because there's been a lot of interest in your presentations. We're well over 300 now
Nice.
that will be in attendance. Yeah.
Just tomorrow?
Yeah, this will be tomorrow. There'll be over 300 students that will go through my presentations.
Now,
And I like,
are you going to do
go ahead.
smaller groups, or is it going to be 300 in an assembly, or how does that work?
Um, it'll be 5 presentations, and most of the groups will have about 70 some people in it. I'm also doing a presentation for students with special needs. Now, that group will be quite small. And what I like to do is I try to get the kids to come up and to help because I'm going to be doing a trick that I used to do. Well, I think in your conversations with your brother, you know, I'm a retired police officer.
Yes.
And my last assignment in the police department was at the police academy teaching in-service training. And I would occasionally interject magic tricks in the presentations because, in all honesty, nobody wanted to attend in-service training. Nobody. And it was required by law that they had to attend. My first year at the academy, I had to retrain the entire department, which was 2,100 people, in evidence admissibility issues. And just saying that title is about to put me to sleep because there isn't any more boring a topic than recognizing evidence, how to package evidence, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I interjected a trick in my presentation, and it involved a styrofoam coffee cup and 3 pencils and a bottle of water. And before I was in training, I was in forensics for 4 years in the crime lab. And I said, you know, the evidence that I most hated was liquid evidence because it would spill. It was hard to contain. I said, but thank goodness a company's come out with a product called the X25, the liquid evidence containment device. So on the side of the coffee cup, I had marked beforehand X25. I pour the water into the coffee cup. I throw all the pencils, pushing them through the coffee cup. I pull the pencils out, and none of the water spills out. And everyone's like, you know, the ooh and the ahs. So I don't think much more of it. We're a couple of weeks into the program, and I get a phone call from the quartermaster, you know, and he says to me, what in the heck are you doing in service? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, I'm getting all this official departmental paperwork requesting this thing called the X25, the liquid evidence containment device. And he said, there's no such thing, Jim. So I had to conclude that class by saying, this was a joke. This was a magic trick. Please don't send any official paperwork to the quartermaster because he's screaming at me, you know.
That's pretty good.
Well, I think it's hysterical, but the quartermaster didn't find the humor in the moment, you know. And
Good.
then, oh,
Good.
go ahead.
No, no.
Well, and then I did a magic, a stage show. It's actually, I have a photo from the book. It's toward the back. I don't know,
Yeah. Okay.
with the head chopper.
Yes.
This was at a school assembly, actually in Erie, Pennsylvania, and there were a couple of hundred students in attendance at that magic show. It was in the auditorium, a couple hundred students at that one moment. So I make a live rabbit appear using the bunny box, which is a trick that to this day I love. I make the live rabbit appear. They're going, "Oh, the beautiful rabbit!" I make the mistake of following that trick up using the Dagger Livestock Vanish, which is where you put the bunny in the box and you push a sword through the box. Now, if you buy that prop, they give you kind of a cheesy wooden sword, but I went to Sunny Surplus and I bought a steel machete. And I put the bunny in the box. You can see the bunny moving around. And I grab the machete, and all these kids start screaming, "He's going to kill the bunny. He's going to kill the bunny." And I put my hand across the opening of the box, boom, push the sword through, lift my hand away, and the rabbits vanished. I thought they were going to stage the storm, storm the stage because they're screaming, "He killed the bunny! He killed the bunny!" I had to immediately make the rabbit reappear, and it settled everything down. Last trick of the show, I bring out the guillotine. I bring up the principal of the school, and they start chanting and stomping their feet. "Chop off her head! Chop off her head!" I was in a state of shock. They want me to decapitate a human being, and they were so up in arms over a tiny rabbit. I don't know. So you never
Great
know what
story.
magic, where
Great
it's going
story.
to go.
Do you
Yeah.
still have a rabbit in your act?
I don't do live animals anymore. I still do the bunny box, but I generally do like a stuffed rabbit. And when I am doing a show, and I limit the shows that I do nowadays to like charitable events and like school presentations. I'll try to find in talking to the teacher, is there someone that you think would enjoy helping me with this trick? Is there someone that recently had a birthday or is going to have a birthday? And then I do the bunny box trick with them, and then we make the rabbit appear, and I give them, the stuffed animal as a present.
Do you still
You
use the
know,
guillotine?
I don't have the full
Palm
head one, but
chopper.
yeah, the wrist chopper I do on myself, because I find to do it on a child is too scary for them.
Yeah,
So I do it under the guise of, remember that kitchen gadget they had years ago, the kitchen magician?
yeah.
It chops, it dices, it slices. So this particular guillotine, what I like is the front opens up, and I can actually pull the whole blade assembly out, and I can take carrots and chop them up and go crazy, and then I could close it back up and chop up more carrots, and then I put my wrist through, as you know, and there's a carrot underneath, and we finish it up that way. But I do the trick on myself because I don't want to traumatize any young kids. It's a pretty frightening effect.
So let me go back in time a little bit here. I
Sure.
asked you about your start in magic.
Right,
You
right.
shared this fantastic story about your trip down to the Magic Mart, which I can relate to that. I don't know how old I was when I first walked into the Magic Mart. Oh, quick little story. I don't know if you.
Sure.
I used to do some errands for Phil Thomas.
Oh, wow.
Now I'd probably been going to the Magic Mart since I was maybe 8. My
Wow.
my dad used to take me down, so I didn't have to get the bus or anything like that. My dad would
Okay.
take he would drop me off on Saturday morning. He'd
Right.
leave, and then he'd come back after the club meetings, which were Saturday night, and he'd pick me up.
Wow.
So I was
Right.
down there for a full day. But I used to run errands because Phil would give me a trick or give me a book or something if I ran errands for him.
Right.
So I did. So he used to give me a pouch, a money pouch. And it was
Okay.
a money pouch. It wasn't disguised. And he'd send me down Charles Street to the bank,
Oh my goodness.
deposit his receipt. Looking back on that, I'm thinking, what was he thinking? But no, he
Yeah.
used to give me the money pouch and say, take it down to the bank. Bring me
right.
back the receipt and I'll give you a
Wow.
trick.
Well, like for me, I mean, when I first went to the magic shop, Phil Thomas's, that's over 50 years ago.
Yeah,
So, we could argue it was certainly a different time 50 years
it
ago.
was a different time.
Right. And you certainly could not do that today, where you have very openly displayed this bank bag, because you'd be robbed in a heartbeat,
Yeah. But I was
unfortunately.
never wrong. I did it numerous times. I never had any problems. I walked down Charles Street. I walked into the bank,
Right.
deposited, walked back with a receipt, and that was
Right.
it. There was
Yeah.
never
Wow.
an issue. But here's
Right.
the question.
Sure.
What inspired you to want to go to the Magic Mart in the first place? What was your initial inspiration?
Magic is for as long back as I can remember, I've loved watching it. I would occasionally see magic specials on television, and I was just taken aback by it. And I thought, wow, I want to learn how to do that. And then just trying to figure things out, I stumbled upon the fact that Phil Thomas had a magic shop in Baltimore. And, I figured out where it was at and whatnot and how to get there. And like I said, even to this day, when I think about that first time I went there, it was literally a magical moment that changed my life. And I'm so thankful to magic because, as I say in the book, magic has so many benefits as a hobby. It helps you with self-confidence. It helps you with public speaking. It helps you with divided attention activities because, as you know, magic involves a lot of secret moves that you're concealing from the audience. It involves pattern, misdirection, all manner of things. And but the most important thing, and this is the bottom line for me, and like tomorrow when I do the school presentations, magic is fun. And in the current state of the world, I'm on a mission to spread fun as much as we can and laughter. And someone asked me one time when I was doing a magic show, it was a group of magicians. Actually, there's a photo in the book from the Erie Magic Club. And we did a lot of charity shows for like homeless shelters and food pantries and such. So this one guy said to me, "What's your specialty in magic?" Because there's illusions, there's stage magic, there's close up, sleight of hand, parlor magic. And I said to him, "I'm a comedy magician." And what that is a way of politely saying, I'm not as good as the other guys. I'm just up there having fun and trying to make people laugh, you know. And to be a comedy magician does take a certain level of skill, but I never got obsessed with now Lou Alston used to call them finger flickers, the guys that got obsessed with sleight of hand, sleight of hand, sleight of hand. And he said the problem is, and I do some sleight of hand, but he said the problem is if you become obsessed with sleight of hand, you become a juggler versus a magician, you know. And he said magic should look magical. This thing, boom, becomes that thing, or appears or vanishes or is restored. Um,
Wise words. Wise words.
yeah, so I always went the route of just trying to make people laugh and have fun. And And it's so funny because, like, even to this day, I talk to officers from the department I retired from, and they still talk about tricks that I did maybe like 10 years ago. Now, the interesting thing about those tricks, they've been magnified and have become much more than what I remember doing. You know, almost to the point you would have thought I walked on water, which I didn't do. But I was like, wait, I did a card trick, and the way they're describing it is almost miraculous. You know,
It's the
so.
mind of the spectator. They perceive something that's actually not there, but in their minds it is, and
Right,
it becomes practically miracle class.
right, right. And that's fine. I mean, um, one of the effects that I'll be doing tomorrow is mental photography, where you start out with blank cards. And one of the things that I'll say to the students is underlying principle of magic is the power of suggestion. And I'll say to them, as you can plainly see, I have a bunch of blank cards, and I show them front and back and all that stuff. And I said, but if I were to tell you this was a deck of cards, through the power of suggestion, you might think that you now see a face and back of a card. And suddenly there's a face and a back of a card, of a deck of cards. And then it happens again and it happens again until we have an entire deck of playing cards. And I'll say, but we know this is not a deck of cards. This is just blank cards. But the power of suggestion is making you believe that you see a deck of cards. And then I say to them, but the power of suggestion only lasts for so long. And then suddenly, boom, the deck vanishes and becomes the blank cards again. You know,
Lovely,
yeah.
lovely.
So,
And that's going to be very memorable for those kids.
yeah.
Yeah. So the early magicians that you saw on TV, do you remember any of them? Who they were?
Yes. The guy that really took my breath away was, and it's so hard to find things on him. I think the correct pronunciation of his name is Ricciardi Jr.
Ooh. So you were watching the Ed Sullivan Show,
Yes,
and you saw Ricciardi on the Ed Sullivan Show,
yes.
and
And I was,
you probably saw him, maybe the broom suspension,
yes,
maybe the buzzsaw illusion.
yes. And then when he did the effect where, oh man, he made an egg disappear barehanded. He made a lemon disappear barehanded. He made a orange. No, he didn't make the orange disappear, but one of the other things he made disappear was a small bird. So he tries to make the orange disappear. He can't do it. And he pulls out a little knife and he cuts through the orange, and inside the orange is the lemon. And then he takes the knife and he cuts through the lemon, and inside the lemon is the egg. And then his beautiful assistant, who oftentimes I think was his daughter, brought out a bird cage that was empty. And he took the egg and he cracked it inside the bird cage, and now there's a bird flying around inside.
Yeah.
But the one that blew my mind was the buzzsaw, because I don't know if it was on the Ed Sullivan Show or a later show, but he had the buzzsaw surrounded by all this drapery, white drapery, and he had, I think, his daughter lay across it, and he did the buzzsaw, and there was so much blood and things flying out of her body, and she's screaming, and I'm like, ah, and
And then he
there are
brings audience members up to walk by.
oh, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's laying there, and there's
She's
blood gushing
dead. I
everywhere.
mean, the audience members are looking, and there's blood everywhere. Yeah.
I mean, but there was a moment in watching Ricciardi perform where you thought, did this really happen? Because he did it with such conviction. And and he did the nightclub bird vanish. And you're familiar with that. And he would take parts and smack them together and throw them over his shoulders, and then the assistants would carry them. And there were moments I'm thinking, man, I hope that bird's okay.
Did you know that Ricciardi was the key inspiration for both David Copperfield and Doug Henning?
No,
If you ask them, and Doug's
right.
passed, but if you ask them who was your inspiration, they point to Ricciardi.
Wow.
So yeah, he was incredibly influential in the 1960s,
Right.
and a brilliant. And, I don't know if you Ricciardi used to be highly choreographed.
Okay. Yes.
He used to there were dance numbers that he did, and everything was very choreographed. And David Copperfield picked up on that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so
Yeah,
if you look at the two performers, you can see that in both of them. They're both highly choreographed performers.
right. Absolutely.
Doug, on the other hand, was inspired by the wonder, just as you're
Yes.
describing the marvelous things that he did and the way it made him feel. So that comes
Right.
out on Doug's performance.
Right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I always loved Doug Henning because he had that like childlike wonder and innocence,
he did.
and it added a certain added beauty to what he did. Uh,
Absolutely.
So yeah, Ricciardi was definitely a big inspiration to me, but I went the opposite track because I don't like all the blood and gore and stuff like that. Although when I was again back at the police academy, myself and another officer or two taught first aid. And I said to them, I'll teach any of the first aid topics as long as you give me splinting. And I told the recruits, to show you a PowerPoint, but if I actually showed you how to deal with a dislocation or a fracture, that would be more impressive. And I told them I could dislocate my wrist. And I would take my hand and I would smash it into the podium that I was standing by. And inside the podium, unbeknownst to them, now these are big, brawny guys. They're on their way to become police officers. They're as tough as they come, a macho crowd. I had an empty plastic water bottle inside the podium. And at the moment that I smashed my wrist, I crunched that plastic water bottle and it gave this horrific sound that sounded like my wrist actually broke and that bones broke. And I actually had people in the class, in the recruit class, scream just like that they had witnessed someone actually breaking their arm in front of them.
It's a good
So
bit.
again, the power of suggestion.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember seeing Steve Myers. I was down at the
Oh
Funhouse
yeah.
Magic Shop, and
Right.
they used to have a club, and they used to have club meetings. And
Right.
Steve Myers gets up, and he's twisting his neck like
Oh
this.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you didn't see the plastic glass he had behind him, but he's crunching that glass, and I'm thinking, oh man,
Oh, it makes you cringe.
yeah,
I mean, it absolutely makes you cringe. You know.
that's good.
Um. So I mean, all the magic that I do, I try to keep lighthearted, and again, the main thrust is to have fun.
So,
Yeah.
who inspires you today? Are you looking at any performers today and saying that person is doing a great job?
Um. Well, I tell you, I love watching Penn and Teller's Fool Us. And I think that the acts that they have had come on have been just, I mean, unbelievably
Yeah,
talented.
yeah,
And I mean, just to see them. And I love watching the reaction of Penn and Teller. This past weekend, there was a gentleman that did a card trick using this old beat up deck of cards. It was brown, it was torn, the box itself was torn. And he did it from the perspective of how his grandfather used to do the trick, as his father used to do the trick, and how he now does the trick. And he actually fooled Penn and Teller in doing this. It was beautiful. But to see Teller's jaw just drop, and I said to my wife, "Oh, he's got him," because they don't know how he did that last move. They might know the first two, but they don't know the last move.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
exactly and
yeah.
that's exactly
I've
what
seen his jaw drop a number of times.
yeah, and
It-
it's wonderful.
yeah,
And Allison, who is the host of the show, she gets such joy out of watching Penn and Teller's reaction. So yeah, like right now I'm watching Penn and Teller, the Full Loss program. And I was blessed when I lived in Baltimore of seeing Penn and Teller. I think they were at the Mechanic Theater at the
yeah.
time.
You might be referring to the what they called the refrigerator tour.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, yeah,
My wife and I, when we were first dating, went and saw that show.
yeah. My wife
And
and
they
I
did,
saw it too.
oh, good.
We went to the theater. We saw Penn and Teller. They were fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
That was,
And
I think in that show, if I remember correctly, Teller was hanging upside down from a trapeze. He
yes,
had to retrieve something out of a bear trap.
yes. It
Remember
was a
that?
sandwich, I think.
Yes, yes, that was
Yeah.
hysterical.
And they're snapping and going all over
Yeah,
the place. Yeah. Oh, it was crazy.
yeah,
And the other person that we saw, and actually someone that I admire, we saw Lance Burton when he did a series of shows out at Atlantic City. And my wife and I and our children went and saw him. And the thing I always liked about Lance Burton, um, he always kind of kept it light too. And it was just a really fun time watching him perform.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Lance Burton, one of the greats, one of our
oh,
greats.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So you wrote this book. Now, what was your motivation for wanting to write? What did you want to accomplish?
Well, actually a bunch of things. Um, the first thing was to write a book that would encourage young people to read. And I said to my daughter, again, who's an elementary school teacher, I said, magic is a great topic. And I think that would really draw kids in. But it's a book for everybody because, as we say at the very top of the book, for boys, girls, for adults, and for the young at heart. Because there are some good, effects in there that even adults would enjoy doing. Uh, so that was the one thing, was to encourage young people to read. But the thing about magic, it causes you to investigate a lot of other things. Um, when I was doing more stage shows, I actually built my own metamorphosis box. I built a prop where my wife would put her arm through it, and we put a series of blades, and the center part of her arm would be gone. Um, and so I was building a lot of props. So that's carpentry, all kinds of stuff. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of magic tricks that use science and mathematical principles. So magic opens up just all manner of interest in all manner of areas. It's one of the best hobbies around, and it helps kids with um, confidence. It helps with public speaking. A lot of kids are really scared about getting before a group. And I used to give a class on public speaking at the police academy. And I did research, what are the four top things that people are afraid of? That was like number three. And public speaking was number one. And I thought, how could that be? you know, but people were more afraid of public speaking than they were of dying. So
Jerry Seinfeld used to say people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy.
right, right. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But the other thing is, I wanted to help kids with creativity because all of the tricks in there require some measure of building the prop. I show kids how to make a magician's hat, which would allow you to produce items out of it. I show them how to make a square circle, which is a classic of magic, and it's all from poster board, and a whole bunch of other tricks in between. You know,
That's great.
yeah,
That's great.
and encouraging the kids to involve the parents too. And vice versa for the parents to involve the kids.
Now,
So make it
if somebody wants to get a hold of you or get a hold of the book,
right.
how would they do that?
The easiest way to find it's through a number of different sellers, but I guess the main seller would be Amazon. So if they went on the Amazon site and they went under books and put in James Moss Sr., you would see the books there. Now, just as a warning to the viewers of the program, it might not be the first book that they see because I actually have 10 books that I've written. So they might have to scroll down a little bit to get to the magic book. And the other thing I would just say to your viewers, um, from the very beginning to the present, every penny of any right or royalty that I get from any of the books, including the magic book, we donate to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital.
Wow. Wow.
And because I had cancer 28 years ago, it literally almost killed me back then. My wife has recently had her own experience with cancer, which we're still dealing with, and she doesn't mind me mentioning that. Um, so, as bad as it was for us as adults to go through, I cannot imagine how much harder it is for a child or an infant to have to deal with cancer. So every penny of any royalties that we get goes right to St. Jude's.
St. Jude's is a marvelous, exceptional charity. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, well, thank you. And they do great work, and they save a lot of lives. And what I love about St. Jude's, um, the families that go there, St. Jude's doesn't take a single penny from them. all the treatments are covered, putting up the family, to be with the child is covered, the meals are, I mean, everything that you could imagine they pay for. Yeah.
So you wrote
So
10 books.
yes.
Are they fiction? Are they nonfiction? Is it mixed?
Um, all of them right now are nonfiction. Um, Actually, I sent one to your brother. I'm hoping he sends it to you, called The Magi. And in the very beginning of the Magi, there it is there. In the very beginning of the Magi, I talk about my experience in going to the Yogi Magic Mart. And, the Magi are known by a variety of different names as the Three Kings, the Wise Men. And in the beginning of the book, I say that in the course of our lives, we all encounter wise men and women and children that help us along our life journey. And there are a great many stories in the Magi um, that talk about my interaction with people that really gave me some really good wise advice. And there are a lot of stories from the police department in that book too. So
Nice.
all the books I've written are nonfiction, and I try to write about topics that encourage people. I've written two books on the topic of love. I've written a book on civility. Um, uh, just books to encourage people and to lift people up. Um, you
Fantastic.
know, yeah.
Then I tell you what I'll do. I'll search out the Amazon listings and
Oh,
put
sure.
those
Thank you.
links in the descriptions below so people can access that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So, but
But
no,
you're
what's
on
that?
Facebook, right? You're on Facebook, so
Yes, I'm on Facebook
yeah.
under Jim Moss Sr. If anyone has any questions about any of the books, they can, direct message me there. And I talk about the books on Facebook too. Um, I well, and two other books that actually you might be interested in because I understand you have a degree in divinity.
Yes,
I wrote a book about Jesus, and I wrote a book on world religions called The Wheel. And I've been very blessed in that I have friends of many faith traditions, and I wanted to ask them about their faith traditions. And it was a really amazing kind of experience to talk to them. They were all very welcoming. And in that book, we talk about Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Native American, and a few other things in between. So I'm trying to cover the gambit. I'm trying to spread positivity throughout the world as best we can.
reminds me of a. I was asked to do a class once in a church on
Okay.
various religions.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a comparative religion class.
Right.
And I mean, the purpose, it was an evangelical church, and they wanted to find
Okay.
out how to share Jesus with other faiths.
Right.
And I thought, well, we could take that point. Most evangelical churches take that direction, but I
Right.
wanted to go in a different direction. So
Right.
I said, well, I'll agree to do the class, but what I want to do is bring in a practitioner of the faith.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I said, there's got to be some ground rules. There can't be any challenging. There can't be any
Right.
confrontations or anything
Right.
like that. I said, you just sit and you listen and
Right.
you ask questions and you learn about that faith. So, and they agreed to do that. So that's what we did. So
Yeah.
I reached out to people that were practicing other faiths, brought them in, and it was, because you can read about somebody else's belief system, but until you have somebody who's practicing that and sharing that from their heart, you don't, it's you
Right.
can't get a sense for it. So it certainly was a different approach to that topic.
Well, when I went and met with a rabbi, he very graciously took me into the synagogue and he showed me the sacred scrolls of the Torah. And I mean, they're just beautiful. Now, I can't read Hebrew, but he said this is the book of Genesis, and but it was just such a good experience. And I walked away from writing that book with the understanding that we have a lot more in common than what we might first think. We really do. And I walked away with a great appreciation and respect for all the folks that I spoke with. They were so kind and respectful of me, and yeah, so it was a wonderful experience. And that's the great thing about writing. And I would say to your audience, I didn't start writing till I was 61. So anything's
Wow.
possible.
Wow.
Anything's possible. And that's what I love about
10
magic.
books after 61.
Yeah.
That is
And
remarkable.
well, thank you. But the one thing I love about magic is magic tends to be very optimistic and positive because magicians tend to say, if you can conceive it in your mind, it's possible, you know? So I've always loved magic because of that optimism that magic brings to the table. So I would say to your viewers, if you have aspirations to be the world's greatest magician, do it. If you have aspirations to be a writer, do it. Whatever you're called to do it. And don't let age box you in. Because like I said, the first book I wrote, I didn't write until I was 61, you
That's
know.
fantastic. That's
Yeah.
great.
So there's hope for all of us.
Yes. Yes,
Maybe
there
Phil
is.
Thomas saw something that I didn't realize when he handed me that book.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
No,
great.
but hey, I no, I got to just say to you, I've watched a few of the programs that you've done. I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I commend you for doing the program. Um, because it's important to share magic with people, and really, the current state of the world, it's kind of bleak at times, and we need to have things that lift us up and make us smile and laugh, and we need to believe in things that are miraculous and wonderful and magical, you know. So, I mean, you're bringing that to the forefront, which is great.
You know what's amazing to me? I don't have a huge audience. I have a good audience and I have a regular audience, and there are people that comment every single week. And so
Good.
there's a good dialogue. If you read down in the comments, there's a good dialogue after every video. But there are a number of people from different countries around the world,
Yeah. Yeah.
including Russia. Now
Wow.
I don't hear from them too much right now.
Well,
Because
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think social media has been cut off, but for a while they were commenting in Russian, and I was having to
Wow.
translate it and answer back.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the internet, which is wonderful, and like Facebook and what you're doing, and the books, I actually had a writer's royalty paid in pounds. And I thought, well, someone in the United Kingdom has bought my books, and it was converted, but the original payment was in pounds. So it's kind of amazing when you think about the fact that something that you're doing here, you know, in your library or magic room is touching someone on the other side of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the point I was trying to make. We've got such an age right now where everything we do becomes almost instantaneously available worldwide,
yeah.
and
Now,
it's amazing.
now the only thing I hope is that the comments following this interview, and I know you're going to do your skillful editing, please, is that wow, this really dragged your program down.
No, no, the interviews are
I,
very popular.
so I hope people enjoy it, and it's been fun chatting with you because you've made me think about things I haven't thought about in a long time, and I feel so blessed to have grown up in Baltimore. That was just a fertile ground of just great magicians.
Oh yeah,
Did you ever meet Cole of Cole and Company?
yes.
Yeah,
Dick Kohlhafer.
yes.
Dick
What a down to
Kohlhafer.
earth guy.
Yeah, great
I
guy.
ran I ran into him all the time at the fun house because him and Mr. Lou were the best of friends.
Yeah,
And it might be in the magic book. There's a collage of photos, and I think he's in one of the groupings of photos. Yeah, so that was wonderful because here he traveled all over the world doing his act.
yeah.
And here I could
That
talk to him.
act, he did it. He did that act on the Jerry Lewis telethon one year.
Yes.
And Jerry says, when the act was over, Jerry says, that was either the worst act or the best act I've ever seen.
Right. Well, it was like the great Valentine.
Yes.
Yeah. Where he would do the I loved when he did the thing where he had the magician's hat on the table
And he's,
and he's reaching in and then he goes all the way down.
oh,
I'm
right.
like,
Who's been messing with the props?
yeah, that's what he said. Someone messed with my props. Yeah. But oh my gosh, again, we grew up in such a just beautiful time of magic. And to meet those guys and just to talk with them face to face. Well, because like you were saying uh, at the Yogi Magic Mart, you could spend the whole day there,
Yeah.
and it was the same way at Denny and Lee's. You could spend the whole day in his
And
shop.
you never knew in those shops, you never knew who was going to walk through the door. It could be
Right,
David Copperfield. It could
right,
be anybody walking through that door. And
right.
yeah, and it was an amazing experience.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, kids today coming up, the brick and mortar shops are disappearing.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I like I said with my book because I go on like the internet and I look at different props and whatnot, but how expensive all that stuff has become. And I thought, if I was trying to get into magic as that 10, 11, 12-year old, I would have to turn away and say, I can't afford this. So, hopefully with my book, um, they can make all the stuff on their own.
Yeah.
And I hope that my book is just a beginning where they say, well, if I could make this, then I could make this other thing,
Yeah.
you know?
The
And
Mark Wilson book is still available. You can get it on Amazon for about $15.
right, which is a great book.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book. And some of the best stage magic that I ever did was I made a bunny box out of a copy paper box because it's one thing if you walk out on stage with a cardboard box versus some really elaborate prop that you bought from a magic shop because everyone can relate to that cardboard box. And I modified it where I made a door in the front that I could pop it open and stick my arm in and whatnot. And people were like, yeah, it's just a copy paper box. And then from that, you produce a live rabbit or whatever. I think it
Cool.
makes the magic so much stronger,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you
Yeah.
know. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well,
Jim, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it.
hey, it's been my pleasure. Thank you. It's been an honor to be with you. Thank you for inviting me on the program. And I hope you get a good response from it.
I think so. I think we will.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a good night now.
You too. All right.
Take care.
Good chatting. Bye bye now.
Bye bye.